succeed? Well, as some of you or maybe all of you know, we're about to have a new president. And for those of you that follow business and the stock market has been flying. It's hit new highs. People are happy with their 401ks. Wall Street at first was scared of what President Trump might bring. Everyone was into a panic, but all of a sudden, everyone is saying he's the next Ronald Reagan. He's going to turn this country around with some of his policies. So tonight I'm going to go over a few of the policies and actually kind of see if they make sense. There's just a few and it's not too complicated. So the first is reparations. A lot of big American companies that do a lot of business overseas, and because the U.S. tax rate is 35% of their profits, they're keeping currently about $1 trillion overseas. A lot of people wanted Obama to make some kind of deal with these companies, maybe give them a break to bring the money back, but you know, he couldn't do it. And Trump has said, well, if you bring this $1 trillion back, instead of taxing you 35%, we'll tax you 10%. Now, although I think 10% is a bit low, somewhere in there, a good compromise, I think makes sense. If we can bring back $1 trillion or $500 billion, put that money into the economy, you can probably create jobs. Although some detractors say a lot of these companies would just use the money to buy back their stock and blah, 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 and it's not going to look good. So that is the first one, tax reparations. The second one is deregulation. Everyone always talks about everything nowadays is too complicated, there's too many rules and regulations. I don't have a business myself, but I've been brainwashed by the media to say, yes, there's too much deregulation. I'm sure if we deregulate things, things will just be better. But I guess it's the problem is how you go about it. Now recently, just today I read in the news that Trump appointed a new EPA director who, whether you agree with it or not, he's against global warming. So what does that mean? We're going to deregulate all of a sudden oil drilling, we're going to have oil frackers and all kinds of destruction going on. If you look back just 6 years ago, I was Googling the BP Amoco disaster. Does everyone remember that summer? Millions of gallons of oils were spewing in the ocean. One of the reasons why this happened is because the regulators that regulate this part of the industry, they're all corporate insiders. So they're basically businesses regulating themselves, and of course, that's when accidents tend to happen. So if we're just going to go back to that, is that what we want? And then also, Trump's Treasury Secretary is going to be a guy from Goldman Sachs. He wants to repeal Dodd-Frank, the regulations for banks. I'm sure there's a lot of regulation. I've heard it's this thick, high regulations for banks, which can hold back lending. But whether or not these things work out, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, another thing, one of Trump's plans is tax cuts. Everyone always going back to Reagan talks about tax cuts. We're going to cut taxes. It's going to give people more money to spend. And sure, the government's going to get less money in taxes, but if we grow the economy, even though we're taking a smaller percentage, we're going to get more because the pie is going to be bigger. Does that make sense? Sure, makes sense. But again, the devil is in the details. Who's going to get the taxes cut? If it's the wealthy that are going to get the taxes, it's middle class. So these are the things we really have to look at closely to see whether or not they're going to work out. The final thing with Trump's plan is an infrastructure spend. You're all hearing about, even the Democrats are saying, we're going to put people back to work, rebuild our infrastructure, crumbling bridges, and maybe high-speed rail. And Trump has proposed spending $1 trillion over 10 years. Now, unlike when Reagan took office, our country's broke now. We have over $16 trillion in debt. So what Trump may be planning on doing, instead of the government spending money, it would be like a privatization plan. And I think in Europe, they have actually private companies that own airports. They build the airports and charge you a fee. But the problem with that, of course, if a private company builds a bridge or a highway, they're going to charge fees. So it might be nice infrastructure, but like in Japan, we don't have any Japanese here, but my girlfriend of mine is from Japan, and they have these really nice bridges and highways, but the fee is so expensive that no one uses it. $35 to take a toll road to Schaumburg. Who's going to do that? Now, another thing with infrastructure spend, and a lot of the spending that Trump wants to do, is that it's already raised the cost of borrowing money. For some of you people maybe that or know someone that's looking to buy a house, the 30-year mortgage has already risen a full point. Also, I was talking before about our national debt at 16 or 17 trillion. Right now, because bond yields are so low, U.S. Treasury bond for 10 years, 2% or whatever. So our interest payments on the national debt, if it's only 1 or 2% of 16 trillion, it's only 160 billion or a couple $100 billion. But as I said, rates have already risen a point. What if 6 months or a year from now rates rise another couple points? First of all, you might have the economy slowing, because if people are buying houses at a 3 or 4% 30-year mortgage, that's one thing. What if it's 6%? Are you still going to buy your dream house for a few $1,000,000 if your payments are 50% higher? So this could actually slow the economy. And also, like I said, if the yields rise, maybe the government debt, these trillions of dollars that we have, if the rates go up from 2% to 5 or 6%, all of a sudden the U.S. government, instead of paying a few $100 billion a year, we're going to pay 5, 6, or 700 billion. And the whole U.S. budget, I think, is about $2 trillion a year. But Trump's plan is hoping that before these things take effect, the economy will grow fast enough and the yields won't rise too fast and things will kind of work out. So a lot of these things are unknown as to what's going to happen, but Wall Street is convinced that it's all going to succeed. Now, many people think stocks are rising just because interest rates are low and it's just a bunch of free money that is pushing up this bubble that Trump actually talked about. So these are a few things to consider, and I myself, as Ann knows, I'm a Democrat, but actually many of my Democratic friends, they sometimes make fun of me. They say, you must be a Republican, because I do actually look at things objectively, and as far as finance goes, I'm maybe a bit conservative. But hopefully I'm going to give Mr. Trump the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give him my support, unlike a lot of my progressive friends, and we will hope for the best. So thank you very much.